The letter should have warned her. 3 men, 1 mountain, no escape until spring. Instead, it had simply said, Mackenzie Ranch needs a wife. The storm hit the moment Abigail Rose Hartley stepped inside the cabin. The door slammed shut behind her as wind screamed across the Montana mountains. Snow hurled itself against the window, so hard the glass trembled in its frame. The fire inside the stone hearth burned bright, but it could not push back the cold that followed her in. And then she saw them. 3 men stood across the room. Not brothers who merely resembled each other. Not cousins with similar features. 3 identical men, tall, broad-shouldered, dark-haired, with amber eyes that watched her with the same steady intensity. For a moment, Abigail thought she had gone mad from the long journey west, until the man closest to her stepped forward. His voice was deep and calm. Miss Hartley, I'm Caleb Mackenzie. He motioned slightly. My brothers, Nathaniel, Samuel. The other 2 inclined their heads. Same height, same build, same eyes. Triplets. Abigail's fingers tightened around the handle of her worn carpet bag. Brothers, she whispered. Caleb nodded once. We run this ranch together. The wind roared outside as if it were laughing at her. 6 weeks earlier, Abigail had been standing at a rain-streaked window in Boston, staring at a life that was closing in on her. At 22, she had aged out of St. Mary's orphanage. She had nowhere to go. No family, no dowry, no protection. Her choices had been simple and cruel. Marry a 55-year-old widower who wanted a housekeeper more than a wife, work in a textile mill until her body gave out before she turned 40, or survive alone on the streets. That was when she found the advertisement in the Boston Globe. Asterisk respectable woman wanted for marriage. Montana territory. Must endure isolation. Hard work expected. Caleb Mackenzie, Silver Creek Ranch. Asterisk Montana might as well have been another world, but another world sounded better than no world at all. She had written back with trembling hope. She had told the truth about being an orphan, about knowing how to cook and sew, about wanting a home. The reply had been short. Asterisk ranch needs a woman. Winters are harsh. Train fighting closed. Asterisk inside the envelope had been $50, more money than she had ever held in her life. She had taken it as a sign. She had boarded the train, but now she stood in a mountain cabin with 3 identical men while a blizzard sealed the door behind her. You didn't mention brothers, Abigail said quietly. Nathaniel stepped forward. His voice was smoother than Caleb's. You agreed to marry a Mackenzie. Her stomach dropped. I assumed there was only one. Samuel's expression softened slightly. We should have explained better. Outside, snow was rising fast. Through the window, she could see nothing but white. Caleb moved closer, though he kept a respectful distance. The storm will last weeks, he said. Once it settles, the passes will be buried until April. April? It was November. Her breath caught. You mean I can't leave? You can try, Caleb said calmly. But you won't survive the mountain in this weather. The truth settled over her like the snow outside. Now she was trapped. Not by chains, not by threats, but by winter. Caleb picked up her bag. You'll have her mother's room. It locks from the inside. That surprised her. You'll be safe here, Samuel added gently. Asterisk safe? Asterisk the word mattered more than they could know. She followed them into the cabin. The place was solid, clean, and organized. Books lined one wall. Tools were neatly hung. The kitchen shelves were full. It did not feel like the lair of wild mountain men. It felt like a home. Still, 3 sets of identical eyes followed her movements over dinner. They explained their parents had died 5 years earlier. The ranch belonged equally to the 3 of them. They had never separated. They worked as one unit, lived as one unit, and they wanted a wife who understood that. You expect me to choose? Abigail asked carefully. The brothers exchanged a look she did not understand. Caleb answered, We expect honesty. We expect partnership. Nathaniel added, We share the ranch, the work, the profits. Samuel's voice was quiet. We don't compete with each other. Abigail understood what they were not saying. They were not asking her to choose one brother and pretend the others did not exist. The idea made her heart pound. I came here to marry one man, she said firmly. And legally, Nathaniel replied. You would. The fire cracked, the wind howled. The cabin felt smaller by the second. I need time, she said. You have it, Caleb answered immediately. They did not pressure her that night. She locked her bedroom door and lay awake listening to the storm tear across the mountain. 3 men in the next room. 3 unknown futures. Morning revealed the truth of her situation. The snow reached halfway up the windows. The barn was barely visible. Caleb forced the door open and snow poured inside. We're snowed in, he said simply. The brothers went to tend the animals, leaving her alone in the cabin. Abigail explored carefully. The shelves held novels and poetry. The kitchen was stocked with preserved vegetables and flour. Everything was orderly. These men were not reckless. They were disciplined, prepared. She found her mother's Bible on a bedside table. In a margin beside one passage was written, * 3 sons, 3 blessings. * the words stirred something in her. When the brothers returned, she asked to help. You don't have to, Samuel said. I don't want to be useless, she replied. Caleb studied her, then nodded. Dress warm. The barn was freezing. Her fingers went numb within minutes, but she learned how to milk a cow, how to feed chickens, how to check for illness. Nathaniel explained the books and the accounts. Samuel showed her how to preserve food. Caleb taught her how to split wood safely. They did not treat her like glass. They treated her like someone who might belong there. Days turned into a rhythm. Work, meals, evenings by the fire. Nathaniel read aloud from books. Samuel carved small wooden toys. Caleb repaired tools. Abigail sewed. The storm continued outside, but inside the cabin, something steadier began to form. Trust. They did not enter her room. They did not touch her without asking. They did not look at her as if she were prey. They looked at her as if she were a decision. On the 15th day, Nathaniel finally spoke plainly. You've seen how we live, he said. You've seen who we are. Caleb's gaze held hers. Do you still intend to leave in spring? Abigail looked at each of them in turn. Caleb's strength, Nathaniel's intelligence, Samuel's quiet kindness. She thought of Boston, of the mill, of the widower's hand gripping her arm. She thought of the mountain air, the firelight, the way they worked together without speaking. I don't know, she admitted honestly. Outside, the wind began to rise again. Another storm was coming, and for the first time, Abigail realized her fear was not only of staying. It was also of leaving. The mountain had closed behind her. The question now was whether her heart would open in front of her. The storm howled louder, and in the glow of the fire, 3 identical brothers waited for her answer. The second storm lasted 10 days. 10 long days where the world beyond the cabin disappeared completely. Snow climbed past the windows. The barn vanished into white. Even the trees closest to the house blurred into shadows behind blowing ice. Inside, the cabin grew warmer, not from the fire, but from closeness. Abigail no longer locked her bedroom door. She told herself it was because she trusted them. That was true, but it was not the only reason. She had begun to listen for their voices at night. The low murmur of conversation. The steady rhythm of their breathing as they slept in the next room. Silence now felt heavier than sound. On the 18th morning since her arrival, she joined Caleb outside to check the cattle. The cold bit at her cheeks, but she did not complain. You don't have to prove yourself, Caleb said as they walked through deep snow. I'm not proving anything, she replied. I'm learning. He glanced at her, something almost like respect in his eyes. You are different from what we expected. What did you expect? She asked. A woman who would panic or demand to be taken back to town. And if I had, we would have taken you. She believed him. That mattered more than he knew. By midday, clouds gathered again. The wind shifted. Caleb stopped and studied the sky. Storm's turning. We head back. They made it to the barn just as snow began falling again. Inside, Samuel was finishing chores. Nathaniel arrived minutes later, breath clouding in the cold air. The brothers moved around each other with quiet precision. Abigail noticed it more now. The way Caleb lifted heavy beams without hesitation. The way Nathaniel calculated feed portions exactly. The way Samuel calmed a nervous horse with a simple touch. 3 different strengths, 1 purpose. That evening, as snow battered the cabin again, Nathaniel spread the ranch ledgers across the table. "We should show her," he said. Caleb hesitated only a moment, then nodded. Abigail sat beside them while Nathaniel explained the numbers. 2 harsh winters had reduced the cattle herd, but the loan had been taken to rebuild. $3,000 due March 1st. Her heart tightened. "How much do you have saved?" 800, Nathaniel answered. "And when you sell cattle in spring, maybe another 1,000. It was not enough. The fire popped loudly, as if emphasizing the silence that followed. "Why didn't you tell me before?" Abigail asked. Caleb's jaw tightened. "It isn't your burden. If I stay, it becomes mine." The 3 brothers looked at her in a way that made her breath catch. She had said if, but she had not said no. The next afternoon brought a knock at the door, a hard knock. All 4 of them froze. No one traveled in winter. Caleb opened the door with a rifle in hand. A tall man stepped inside, brushing snow from his coat. Lawrence Grayson, the man who now owned their loan. His eyes swept the room and landed on Abigail. "Well," he said with a thin smile. "So, the rumors are true." Caleb stepped between them. "State your business." Grayson removed his gloves slowly. "Your payment is due March 1st. 5 weeks. I've done the math. You won't have it." "We will," Nathaniel said evenly. Grayson laughed. "Partial payment doesn't count. I'll take the ranch at auction. Water rights alone are worth more than your debt." Abigail felt heat rise in her chest. "You rode all the way up here to tell them that." Grayson's gaze sharpened. "I rode up here to see what I'll own soon." "And if they pay?" she asked. He shrugged. "Then I'll look elsewhere." He paused near the door. "You might want to settle your domestic arrangement before spring. The territorial marshal might find it interesting." Then he left. A silence filled the cabin like smoke. Abigail's hands trembled, but not from fear. From anger. "He thinks he's already won," she said. Caleb stared into the fire. "We don't have enough." Abigail looked toward the bedroom, toward the wooden trunk she had seen weeks earlier. "Show me your mother's quilts," she said. Samuel brought them out carefully. 6 of them, each one stunning, intricate patterns, precise stitching. "Your mother sold these in Denver," Nathaniel said. $200 sometimes. Abigail's mind raced. "I can quilt." All 3 men turned toward her. "I learned at the orphanage," she continued. "If I make enough, we can sell them in Helena before March 1st. Caleb frowned. "That's 4 days away by wagon in good weather." "Then we leave early." Samuel looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time. "You would do that work day and night." Abigail met his eyes steadily. "If I stay here, this ranch becomes my home, too." No one argued. The next morning, she began. Fabric was cut with careful precision. Patterns sketched late into the night. The brothers handled everything else: cooking, animals, chores. They refused to let her lift heavy buckets or chop wood. "You're saving us," Samuel said once. "Least we can do is keep you warm." She worked 16 hours the first day. Her fingers ached. Her back burned. But the first quilt was finished in 5 days. It was beautiful. "Mother would have approved," Samuel whispered. She did not stop. Second quilt. Third. Fourth. As snow fell outside, time narrowed. Sleep became short and restless. On the 10th night of sewing, Samuel found her asleep at the table, needle still in her hand. He carried her to bed despite her protests. "You are not breaking yourself for us," Caleb said firmly the next morning. She sat up, stubborn. "I'm not breaking. I am fighting." Nathaniel did the math. "At this pace, you'll collapse before you finish." "Then adjust the pace," she said. "But we finish." They compromised. 8 hours of sewing a day, proper meals, sleep. The pile of quilts grew. 5, 6, 7. Each one more beautiful than the last. The storm eased near the end of February. The sky cleared enough to see the mountains again. On February 26th, Abigail finished the 9th quilt. A wedding ring pattern. A symbol of commitment. A symbol of promise. She held it up in the sunlight. "It's done." Caleb looked at the stack. Hope flickered in his eyes for the first time since Grayson's visit. "We leave tomorrow." They loaded the wagon carefully, wrapped each quilt in oilcloth, and packed food and blankets. The journey to Helena would be brutal, but staying meant losing everything. That night, Abigail stood alone on the porch. The mountains were silent under starlight. She heard boots behind her. Nathaniel joined her. "You've changed this ranch," he said quietly. "I only sewed fabric. You did more than that." She turned toward him. "And if this fails, then we face it together." The word together echoed in her chest. Inside, Samuel was checking supplies. Caleb was sharpening tools. 3 men who had given her space, respect, choice. She realized something in that moment. She was no longer choosing between one brother or leaving. She was choosing between fear and courage. And courage felt warmer. When she stepped back inside, all 3 looked up. "We ride at dawn," Caleb said. Abigail nodded. "Then we ride as a family." None of them corrected her. Outside, the mountain waited. Inside, hope burned brighter than the fire. They rode before sunrise. The sky was still dark blue, the air sharp enough to sting the lungs. The wagon wheels creaked over frozen ground as Caleb guided the horses carefully down the mountain trail. Abigail sat beside him, the quilts packed tightly behind them. 9 pieces of hope stitched with sore fingers and stubborn faith. Nathaniel rode ahead on horseback, scanning the path. Samuel followed behind, watching the wagon wheels. But no one spoke much. There was too much at stake. The mountain roads were cruel, even in summer. In late February, they were nearly impossible. Snow drifted high across narrow passes. Twice they had to stop and dig a path wide enough for the wagon. Abigail's hands blistered again despite gloves. "We can rest," Samuel told her. "No," she said, pushing snow aside. "Every hour matters." On the second day, wind picked up again. Caleb studied the horizon. "If it turns into a storm, we shelter. We don't risk it." She nodded. But the weather held, barely. On the 4th evening, the lights of Helena appeared in the distance. Abigail's throat tightened with relief. They drove straight to the largest mercantile in town. A woman named Mrs. Patterson inspected the quilts one by one. Her fingers traced the pattern slowly. "These are remarkable," she said at last. "Who made them?" "I did," Abigail answered. Mrs. Patterson's eyes sharpened. "You learned well." "We need to sell all of them tomorrow," Caleb said. "That may not be possible," Mrs. Patterson replied carefully. "But there is a charity auction at the Continental Hotel. Wealthy buyers. If they are impressed, the bidding could climb high." It was a risk, but it was their only chance. The next afternoon, the ballroom was filled with silk dresses and polished boots. Crystal chandeliers glittered above, and Abigail felt painfully plain in her simple wool dress. But when the first quilt was lifted for display, the room fell quiet. The bidding began at $50. Her heart sank. Then a hand rose. 100. Another voice followed. 150. The numbers climbed. 200. 225. The first quilt sold for more than she had dared hope. The second sold for 200. The third for 250. By the time the 6th quilt was auctioned, the room buzzed with excitement. Word spread that the stitching rivaled anything from back east. When the final quilt, the wedding ring pattern, was lifted, the room grew still. 200, the auctioneer called. 300, the bids rose fast. 400, 500, silence. The gavel struck. Sold. Abigail felt her knees weaken. 9 quilts for a total of $2,800. More than enough. Caleb gripped her hand tightly. "You did it," he said. "No," she whispered. "We did." They left Helena immediately. There was no time to waste. On March 1st, just before noon, they rode into Silver Creek. Lawrence Grayson sat inside the saloon as if already celebrating his victory. He looked up with mild amusement. "Back so soon." Caleb dropped a leather satchel onto the table. "Count it." Grayson opened it slowly. His expression changed as he counted. $3,000 exact. Paid in full. The saloon grew quiet. Grayson closed the satchel. "Impressive," he muttered. "I misjudged you." He slid the loan papers across the table. "Your ranch is yours." Abigail felt something lift from her chest that she had not realized was crushing her. Outside, word spread quickly. The Mackenzie brothers had beaten the odds. and the quiet woman from Boston had stitched the victory. When they returned to the mountain that evening, the air felt different, lighter. The ranch stood waiting in golden sunset light. Home. That night, they sat around the fire. No storm, no fear, just warmth. Caleb stood first. To Abigail, who fought for this place like it was already hers. Samuel lifted his glass. To family. Nathaniel added softly. To partnership. Abigail looked at the three men before her. 3 different strengths, 3 steady hearts. I came west looking for safety, she said. I found more than that. I found belonging. Silence settled gently. Caleb stepped closer. Spring will clear the pass in a few weeks, he said. Reverend Miller will come. Abigail nodded. Ah, yes. She had made her choice long before the quilts were finished. Long before Helena. I will marry you, she said, meeting Caleb's eyes. Then she looked at Nathaniel, at Samuel. And I will build my life with all 3 of you. There was no shock, no hesitation, only quiet certainty. The wedding took place in April. Wildflowers pushed through melting snow. The town gathered out of curiosity at first, then stayed out of respect. Reverend Miller married Abigail legally to Caleb. But when vows were spoken, all 3 brothers stood beside him. And when she promised loyalty, she looked at each of them. The mountain accepted them. The town slowly did too. Work filled the summer. Cattle multiplied. The garden flourished. Abigail's quilts became known beyond Helena. Orders arrived by post. Extra income flowed in. But the true wealth of the ranch was not measured in dollars. It was measured in laughter echoing across the yard, and shared meals, and hands reaching for one another without hesitation. Years passed. Children were born. A strong son first, then twin daughters, then another boy. They grew up calling all 3 men Papa. No one lacked love. No one lacked guidance. If strangers questioned their family, the children only smiled. We have more, the eldest once said proudly. That's all. The ranch prospered, not because of luck, but because 4 people chose courage over fear. One autumn evening, many years later, Abigail stood on the porch, watching her children chase each other across the yard. Caleb came behind her, arms steady around her waist. Nathaniel joined them. Samuel soon after, for silhouettes against a Montana sunset. Do you regret it? Samuel asked quietly. She thought of Boston rain against cold windows, of fear, of hunger, of loneliness. Then she looked at the ranch, at her children, at the 3 men who had given her choice instead of force. Not for a single moment, she answered. The wind moved gently through the pines. The mountains stood tall and silent. Abigail Rose Hartley Mackenzie had crossed a continent searching for a home. She had found it in the most unexpected way. 3 brothers, 1 mountain, 1 family built not by convention, but by courage. And as the sun slipped behind the peaks, she felt something simple and steady in her heart. She was loved. She was chosen.